Hey, Macarena, hi. All right.
All right, Alessandro, we just got back from Red Storm Entertainment. We played a bunch of Division 2, and I gotta be honest, I'm starting to see history repeat itself from when Destiny 2 was struggling around Curse of Osiris, and everybody jumped ship on the really good Division 1.8 patch.
The original game actually had a really rather spectacular post-launch life. It added a lot of new content. It refined the leveling system in particular, and also the Dark Zone content. In addition to adding sort of a quasi battle royale style mode called the survival mode. Judging from what we played, they're very much trying to keep that second wind that they got during the post-launch period, and the developers were keenly aware of I guess the positivity they got from the fans. It was interesting to see how that all came together with the next game's expanded take on the familiar Dark Zone multiplayer content, which is sort of this very unorthodox PvP VE gameplay, which of course means player versus environment.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with a deep dive into the Dark Zone. Specifically now, there are 3 Dark Zones. We'll dedicate most of our piece to that. And then towards the end of this, we'll get into dedicated PvP called Conflict, weapon balancing, and then we'll get into some of the things we don't like quite as much about the game, like movement.
They're right here. Grenades. Oh, grenade on him, grenade on him. Toss a grenade, guys. Oh, yeah.
Jesus.
Ambush. So good.
Alright, so the Dark Zones. The First Division's Dark Zone wasn't that great at launch. It got better over time. A lot of the issues focused around just the power disparity of high-level rogue players just absolutely smoking low-level players. And for a lot of people, it just wasn't fun. It just wasn't a place that you would go unless you had a high-level crew. And it was this huge section of the map that was just dead to you, essentially, which was not great. Division 2 is doing a lot of things to try and make that better, friendlier, give you more play styles.
More inviting. And one of the things they're actually doing is that they're having players sort of take part in a set of introductory missions for each of the 3 Dark Zones. And one of the things that the developers wanted to do was that I guess they wanted to sort of allow even the more casual players to feel like they can take part in the Dark Zones, because as you said earlier, it was a very hardcore environment.
On that note, what are some of the more specific changes they're making to the Dark Zones?
The big thing is that the loot grind is a bit different this time. One of the things that you could find in the Dark Zone in the original Division was that there's these sort of infected items, and that's still there, but you can actually find normal loot, within the Dark Zones in the Division 2, and
that's a pretty big change.
Yeah, that's a major change. By making normal loot as more easily or readily available for players, you're actually you're feeling more rewarded, I guess, for actually taking part in it. However, there is still infected items, and those items are a lot more rare, and they're I guess they're more valuable than a standard drop. So I'm assuming these infected items will be more epic level items. And another thing is that they're bringing back these sort of loot chests, but with a bit of a twist. This time, these loot chests have specific Dark Zone keys, and if you have the key, you can unlock the chest. However, if you don't, you can choose to basically pick the lock and just force your way into it. But if you do that, then you're going to go rogue. And that's also another big change that we're seeing with the Dark Zone, is that they sort of I guess basically overhauled the rogue system.
Yeah, they've done a lot of changes to it now, and now there's a lot more ways that you can go rogue. It took us a while to wrap our head around it. We were there for a couple of hours, and I feel like we kind of got it by the end.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different approaches to going rogue in the Dark Zone, and there's a large number of, or there's a spectrum of rogue. So light rogue is things like picking chests, killing a player and stealing their loot, cutting something off of a loot line. That can go all the way up to manhunt, where then you've kind of snowballed into killing a bunch of other players. However, there are now escapes that you can do for manhunt other than just wait out the timer. So you can wait out the timer for manhunt, but you can also now find a manhunt escape node that you hack to get out. And then there's a whole other aspect of rogue where with these chests, you can go rogue picking a chest, and then you get a series of other chests to go pick, and you get more rogue as you pick further and further chests, and that actually leads to you escaping to a special underground vendor who you can level up to buy extra cool stuff. So one really cool impact of that for solo players is you can actually have a full rogue run now without ever firing a shot. You can just stay away from other players, and they've made changes to the map just to make you more aware of where other players are. So if you want to do a stealth run, it's easier to stay away from danger.
If you take part in more rogue activities, you're basically going to become more notorious in that specific dark zone, and that will make you more of an enticing target for other players.
Now, I will say the rogue system felt a little bit too protective in the build of the game that we saw. And, it could change before the final build, but there were a lot of ways to go rogue, and when you were looking at other players, it was hard to tell if they were somebody who you could shoot. For example, you could potentially have rogue players being hunted by non-rogue players, and because shooting players doesn't make you go rogue, you have to declare yourself rogue. It was confusing which was which, so you could shoot one of them and do damage, and you could shoot the other one and do no damage, but you also would not go rogue unless you declare yourself rogue by holding down a button.
It was definitely confusing, considering how, I guess, sort of involved the systems are, and again, it's very nebulous in terms of how you become rogue and how you stay sort of neutral. Actually, the one case that really stuck out to me was when we were doing a set of rogue missions. It was us in a party. Then we got to a point where we found this terminal on a wall, and we knew another team was chasing behind us, so we ran up to that terminal to basically cash in and turn in the reward. Then that basically ended our sort of rogue run, but immediately after that, the other team basically caught up to us, and they started shooting us, but they weren't doing any damage because we basically disengaged from being rogue. And it was incredibly awkward seeing that, because we were just basically standing there while they were basically unloading their heavy machine guns into us, and nothing was happening. And it was and at the same time we were wondering what's happening, aren't we still rogue? And it's no, we're not. We already turned in the reward. So I do think that's something that definitely needs to be, I guess, tinkered with a bit, because it's definitely, especially from playing the first game, and seeing how the Dark Zone works in that, which is in itself has already went through a number of changes to become sort of easier for people to get into. I do feel like some parts of the systems need to be sort of cleared up a bit, and made a lot more clear for people.
We had another great moment too where we were about to extract and we saw a team setting up on us, and we had a more classic rogue moment where we just pressed the button and went rogue on them preemptively, and it worked out in our favor.
Oh yeah, it was great. When it works, it's a lot of fun.
Take that!
Okay, so let's talk about guns. Division definitely has the kind of ammo-sexual nature of customizing your weapons, and boy, does it feel good to just mess around with those guns.
Yeah, customized, and basically you can just strip apart an entire weapon. You can add underbarrel attachments like grips, silencers, and other modifications what have you. And what is interesting for this time around is that they're adding another layer of customization with the specialization classes. So
which only comes in
towards the end of the game, after the campaign, actually.
I think they said full 40 hours.
Yeah, the full campaign is supposedly, according to the developers, it's 40 hours. So at the very end, I'm assuming after the last mission, you'll be able to pick a particular heavy weapon, like a grenade launcher, a crossbow, or I believe an anti-tank sniper rifle. And that also comes into play with how you choose to sort of deck out your characters, particular gadgets, and what sort of modifiers you want to put on your weapons, but also for the gadgets as well. So you can make some really interesting characters.
And again, I can't show you the menus because of restrictions, but gear sets are much bigger this time around. I'm collecting armor sets that give you different resistances, bonuses, damage output.
Keep him occupied on that balcony.
Okay, got one on Main Street.
Did we get him?
Yep.
Oh, good flank.
Oh, I shot you in the ass with a crossbow bolt.
He's still there.
What you think?
He's behind you.
India, do you
He's
got
down.
it?
Nice.
India is clearing the zone.
That was good. That was good stuff, guys.
The Division 2 has standalone PvP as well, in addition to the Dark Zones. It's called Conflict, and it feels like the Wild West when it comes to how effective guns are. Even though there's stats balancing, there's definitely builds that are better than other builds. We definitely had much better luck with some of the classic guns that do well, like a Vector. Some of the light machine guns definitely needed heavy modification to become viable in PvP.
Also, one guy was like, just wrecking us with like this auto shotgun, which, I feel like maybe needs some balancing, but it'll be interesting to see how I guess this more traditional PvP mode will sort of play out once it releases at launch.
That is compelling in these types of games, to get wrecked by something and try and figure out what it is and how you get it or how you beat it by making something better.
And I would say my biggest takeaway from playing the PvP conflict mode was that you still have a lot of control over your ability to make a great PvP character.
We played about 2 of the maps, I believe, and honestly, I was sort of like getting tired of them, like after the 3rd match or so. But
yeah, there are only 3 PvP maps at launch, so they will definitely need some more.
The game does have a pretty extensive post-launch sort of schedule, so and it does seem like they'll be supporting like in addition to the Dark Zone, but also the conflict modes as well.
Okay, so one area I'd like to talk about is just movement in general.
Oh yeah.
And we did ask in a developer interview, fair or not, why there isn't a crouch still in this game. And they said that basically they wanted you to engage with their cover system, and that was the extent of that answer. But I had so many specific examples, and particularly in conflict mode, where I was behind a barricade and I was having a hard time getting my character to push up and over a barricade to fire at an enemy player who was unable to fully take cover behind the sloping hood of a car because the hood slopes and the sticky cover system doesn't really give you very good options in terms of how to hide parts of your body that are just determined to be sticking out at any given time.
Yeah, there's always like a little bit of yourself sort of peeking out, like your head or like your shoulder or whatever.
And I definitely did some work with a sniper rifle on parts of people's bodies that I don't think they intended to stick out. And trying to inch backwards when you're snapped to cover is kind of awkward too, because your character tends to rotate at a certain point. I would still like a crouch button in Division, and I would like more fine control over the cover mechanics. Alright, so Division 2 is coming out in March. So is Destiny Season of the Drifter, and Anthem will have already been out February 22nd. So it's a competitive market in early next year. Overall, I like Division a lot. Division 2 feels like a very solid sequel, and I'm looking forward to, I don't know, to be honest, I'm looking forward to taking a break from Destiny and playing it.
I think a lot of people are trying to find different options for Destiny at this point.
How are you feeling about that launch window?
It's going to be crazy competitive because I think there's so many different like games trying to sort of take that Destiny's crown, so to speak. Anthem is basically the closest to game to Destiny besides Destiny, and the Division actually already has like a very dedicated following, and a lot of people are already looking forward to this game. And I think this game is looking very promising, if a bit familiar to the first game. It feels very similar, like to the first game, but I do think a lot of the changes to the Dark Zone in particular, and also the expanded PvP should really I guess give a lot of the hardcore players something to really look forward to.
Well, we'd like to hear your thoughts out there, or if you have any burning questions we can get answered for you, put them in the comments below. For more coverage of Division 2, we're certainly going to be playing a bunch. Stay tuned to GameSpot.com.
This is the kind of team unity we need going into the Dark Zone.
Good teamwork.
Hey.
Hey.
All right. We won. Dark Zone.
You'll need to go through the checkpoint to reach the contaminated site.